All right, so I've been using these two gimbals for the past couple weeks. This is the new Insta360 Flow, and this is the DJI OM6 or Osmo Mobile 6. And in this video, I'll just be talking about some of the differences between these two. There's a lot of things that are very similar, but of course, definitely some things that are different. So I'll highlight some of the pros and cons of both. And the first one we'll talk about is size. And as you can see here, size is kind of similar. There is a little height difference here with the OM6 versus the Flow. And if you go into something like the portrait mode, let me switch that over there, and you can see a little bit difference as far as height goes. So a little bit taller here on the OM6 versus the Flow. Now the one thing that does separate the Flow from the OM6 is this right here. We have a built-in tripod right into the handle, so it keeps it nice and compact, and when you need it, you just actually pull it down just like that and open it up, and there you go. Now the OM6 does come with a tripod, as you can see right here. You just have to unscrew it from the bottom, but it is another accessory that you have to carry with you. The Flow does have that integrated into the handle, so as far as compact and portability goes, I will give it over to the Flow. Now it definitely is convenient to have that tripod built into it, but just know that the tripod isn't that sturdy. Like, it's not as sturdy as this one here on the OM6, where you can just place it down. It's a solid leg. Here, the legs are actually broken down into two pieces. So when you do put it down, you kind of have to put it down a little lightly. And as you can see here, there's a little bit of a flex to it. Now, if you wanted something a little sturdier to hook up to the Flow, the great thing is they do have a 1/4-20 at the bottom. Both of these handles have a 1/4-20 at the bottom. So if you wanted to put on another tripod that has a little bit wider of a base and doesn't have that split here and a little bit more sturdy, you are able to do that with that 1/4-20. Now, when it comes to unfolding and deploying your gimbal, this is the Insta Flow. All you have to do is take your clamp here that clamps around your phone. But with the Flow, all you do is place it right on top, just like so, and then you're gonna flip it up and you're good to go. Once you unfold it, it automatically turns on, and the OM6 is very similar. Just like the Flow, you have that mobile clamp on the side. Now the difference here is that you have to actually unfold it first because you can't keep the phone on it while it's closed. So you have to actually unfold it first, and then you can put the clamp on, and there you go. Now as far as opening it up and deploying it, very similar as far as the time goes, but when you want to put the OM6 away, you have to take the phone off because you can't fold the gimbal while the phone is on it. So if you try to fold it down, the phone and the gimbal, the clamp gets in the way, so you have to take the phone off, and then you're able to now close it up. Now with the Flow, all you do is close up the tripod, and then you can actually flip it this way. And yeah, you can keep the phone on it. I mean, it's not gonna do much. You're not gonna throw this in your pocket like this, but at least you're able to keep it on there. So as far as that goes, it's a little bit easier to just mount and deploy with the Insta360 Flow versus the OM6. Now, as far as the modes go, they are both very similar, so we don't need to go through that. They all have the pan, tilt, FPV mode. You can also do the spinning shots on both of these gimbals. Now, as far as changing the modes go on the Flow, we do have letters here. So you have the F for the follow mode, you also have the PF or pan follow, as well as the FPV mode. So it is pretty clear here on the front of the Flow, where here on the OM6, they use an illustration. So while they might be the same modes, we have illustrations here to change it. All you do is switch this button right there. So in a way, it's cool that they have the illustration. The only thing is that if you don't know what does what, then it's a little confusing. So I do like the fact that it actually just says, you know, F or PF or FPV on the Flow a little bit better than just having illustrations, because majority of people just might not know what those illustrations mean. Now as far as battery life on these gimbals, this one is actually rated for 12 hours. The Flow is rated for 12 hours. The OM6 rated for 6.5 hours. Now for me, using gimbals is not something I personally use like an all day type of shoot. So with both of these, I was able to do a lot of my review, a lot of all the shooting I was doing, and both of them were good enough as far as how I've been using them, because I've been using them kind of on and off throughout the day. But if you're the type that is going to be using this as a workhorse and you want to have the longer battery, then definitely the Flow is the way to go. And speaking of battery, the one thing that was pretty cool is that if you are low on charge on your mobile device, there's actually an output, a USB-C port on the very top, not the bottom one. The bottom one's actually for the charging, and then the top one you can actually use as an output. So if you wanted to charge your phone while you're in the field, you can plug it in from the bottom here, right into your phone, and it's pretty much like an external charger. Unfortunately, that's something you can't do on the OM6. You can't use this as like an external charging bank for your phone. It just has the one input for charging the actual battery that's in the handle. You can't do what the Flow does. Now, as far as ergonomics goes, I will give that to the OM6. It just feels a lot better in the hands because of this grip right here. Now that will be like a give and take because you do have a bigger grip. It is a more comfortable grip, of course, but you're sacrificing a little bit bigger of a size compared to the Flow. But when it comes to shooting, if you're shooting out there for a long period of time, I do prefer the grip on the OM6. Now, one way you can actually get a better grip on the Flow is by pulling that tripod down and bringing that other part back up. So now you have a grip here. It does not feel the same as the OM6 though, but kind of find a middle ground. They do have that option there. So if you are gonna be holding this for a longer period of time and you have big hands, you definitely wanna pull this down. On the front of the gimbals, we do have this scroll wheel here on the Insta360 Flow, and I actually really like this larger scroll wheel compared to the OM6. Now, I don't really zoom too much when I'm out there shooting, but I did find it really nice to be able to hold the gimbal this way and then just slide my thumb up and down here in order for me to zoom. Now here on the OM6, you do have a scroll wheel, but it was kind of weird to try to use it and then use your thumb the same way you would use on the Flow. So this really might come down to preference on how you are actually using the zoom. Some might prefer the ability to have that on the left, to use your left hand to scroll in, or if you just wanted to do everything with your right hand, you could actually just use that to scroll. Now, when it comes down to tracking, I will give the tracking over to the Insta360 Flow. I put these side by side in a few different scenarios, and the Insta360 seem to track and keep hold of my subject a lot longer than the OM6. The AI on the Flow seems like it's able to pick up and recover a lot better than the OM6. There's a few times where I was out there tracking, my kids going around my backyard, and it would lose it, and all of a sudden you'll see it just recover and track the subject again. Putting the same scenario together with the OM6 would normally just kind of track off and then stop. I would have to bring the subject back in, bring my kids back in, reframe, and it seemed like the Flow was able to hold that subject a lot longer than the OM6. Now, doing some sample tracking tests, I think that's a pretty standard one a lot of people do. I didn't really understand how good the AI was as far as understanding the subject that is tracking and then picking it back up if they were to go out of frame until I did some tests behind this little pillar right here. Now, for the first test with the Insta360 Flow, I started tracking my daughter on this side of the pillar, and I had her walk behind it and then have my son come out the other end to see if the AI would track my son or would it just not track at all. And as you can see here in the videos, I had my daughter tracked and then my son would go and the AI would not continue tracking my son until my daughter came out, and then it recognizes the face and then started tracking my daughter as she walked by. Now, of course, I wanted to try the same thing with the OM6. I did a bunch of different tests on it, and every single test, it was kind of weird just seeing it, but it would track my daughter once she passes behind, and then once she goes on this side, when my son came out, it would automatically start tracking my son. So it would just basically kind of continue the tracking, but it wasn't recognizing the face. It would just continue tracking the person or a subject. I did it about 3 or 4 times, and every single time, like I said, it would just track the subject that came out from the back, and then when I had them stand side by side, it would still continue tracking my son and not my daughter. When I had them track side by side on the Insta Flow, it would actually still maintain my daughter's face on the AI. And of course, if you're looking at getting a gimbal, you want that stable footage, you want that nice level horizon. Putting these to test as far as just doing basic walking and running, they are very, very similar as far as stabilization goes. Now, when it comes to keeping that horizon level, both of these are really, really good. The one thing with the OM6 though, it does give you a little bit more as far as tilt access goes. As you can see here, if I move them to the side and I were to hold the trigger down. So when you hold the trigger down, you want to keep that, the phone will try to stay straight as long as possible. So if I hold this down like that and I tilt forward, you can see that the OM6 holds that straight horizon a little bit longer, where here, because of the motor position on the Flow, you're not able to tilt as far. If you're the type to use your gimbal for vlogging and you wanted to be able to use both the front camera and the rear camera, the one thing on the OM6 is that if you wanted to switch cameras, you actually do have to stop the recording, switch it from front to back or back to front, and then start again. With the Insta360 Flow, you are able to actually continuously shoot from front camera to back or back camera to front. And finally, when it comes down to price, both of these come in at $159. Now, of course, that's at the time I'm recording this, so things might change, things might get lower, there might be some sales, but right now, they are both $159. If you guys are interested in picking up either one of these gimbals, the links will be down below in the video description. Of course, if you guys got some value from this video, a big like would be much appreciated. This is Insta360 with FlytPath.com. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.